Yes. I am back, guys. I am back. Obviously, just live just a second ago with Cole James Cash of Ghetto News Network. Make sure you guys go check out that show. And I'm going to be live here for however long you guys want me to be live for. Because there was a few of you that wanted me to be live, and I thought, why not? We can talk some combat sports. We can talk whatever. This is definitely going to be more of a Q&A. So if you guys are watching or listening, jump in the chat. If you're watching on Twitter right now, don't be afraid to comment. I can see those comments right now. So if you guys want a question on Twitter right now, ask away. It could be anything. Literally anything's on the table. I shouldn't say anything on the table, but most things are on the table. We have, God, what boxing do we have this weekend? I've been so out of the loop, guys. I apologize. It's been a crazy week, or a few weeks, I should say. We've basically completely remodeled my bathroom, so it's just been crazy. And there's a big electrical issue that became a fucking, not money pit per se, but it reminds me of the movie Money Pit with, God, who is that? Who's in Money Pit again? Why can't I remember who's in Money Pit? Anyways, so that's kind of, it's been that sort of 2 weeks now, 3 weeks. I don't know how long it's been. That's why there hasn't been a show with me and Rob lately, is because of that. I can't do a show at 2 o'clock in the middle of the day because there's construction going on. We're ripping up and painting now, so it's just, sorry about that. But like I've said, Gary should be on for tomorrow at the very least. I did text him saying that I am going live right now, but I don't know if he can jump on this late. It's 9 p.m. over there. He's an old man. Old guys can't be keeping up with us youngsters, right? I'm looking at the boxing schedule right now because I legit don't remember what the fuck has happened this weekend for boxing. Been so out of the loop. All I can think about is the next weekend, which is the Charlo doubleheader, and already I can sense people are going to be calling me PBC fanboy because of that. But that's kind of all I've been thinking about is honestly that event, because I feel like that's the first big one we have coming up. Oh, we have the Lubin card against Gachet and King Tug. Jared Enos versus Juan Carlos Abreu. That's not a bad card per se. It's not the greatest. Pedraza versus Javier Molina. F.A. Ajagba making his top-ranked debut. Robeisy Ramirez. It is what it is. I'll be honest, guys. I don't know about any of you. I think this goes without saying. With everything that's going on with the world, it's been very hard to stay focused on boxing and to kind of just like block things out. Even though this is an escape in a way, I think for people that like do any sort of podcasting, like it's an escape, but it's also work. Like I prep a lot for these shows, or at least I try to. And again, with the world seemingly falling apart and fires all around, it's hard to stay focused. So I've been in and out of it. I do apologize to all of you guys that are just hardcore listeners to combat sports, and that's the only reason you subscribe and listen to me or us. I do apologize to that. I'll be honest. You're going to... Damn, Gary's going to jump on. Okay, I can... Hold on. I'll email you the link, okay? Because it'll be easier at this point to email you the link. Hold on, guys. Let me get Gary on so we can talk some boxing. And again, Gary, I'm sorry that this was really impromptu. I feel like the last show with Cole James Cash was very short, and I just haven't been on for a while, and I wanted to talk. You know me, I'm a fucking talker. Gmail. And also, I want to open this idea to people. I know we only have a few people listening right now, but I want to open up this idea. I want, in essence, this network, so to speak, like MCR, Trending Now Network, like whatever we want to call it, right? I want this to be more of in my vision nowadays, because my vision has been shifting, is I wanted to get to a point where like I don't own this to a degree. Like I don't want to own this. I want it to be a thing where like me, Gary, Rob, Foo, and other people, because I want to bring more people on to create more content, like we own it equally. And obviously it's not like it's a company that it does make money, but it doesn't make any money to like be self-sufficient. I know it's kind of a hard thing to ask, but that's something that I've been thinking about. Gary, I know I've been talking here and rambling, so I haven't sent you the email. I apologize. It's hard to talk and type at the same time. I'll be completely honest. All right, Gary, it is and loads. There he goes. It is sending now. Message sent, Gary. Okay. Gary using that old man's strength to power through this. Yo, Neil. That was good. Jason, I'm gonna get in this too. Hey, I'm opening it up. Like that's why I'm kind of like open this conversation up to like you guys, because like it's the same like 300 of us that watch and listen to this. You know, like I want you guys to start creating. Not I want you guys, but if any of you guys want to start creating content or start to sort of itch that creative drive that I think everyone sort of has to a degree, I want this to be a place where you can create content, and maybe it's not boxing. Maybe it's something else. Maybe you like football or soccer, basketball. Maybe you like TV shows. Maybe you like movies. Maybe you like plays. Maybe you like music. Whatever it is, like I have a vision of like a true like worker co-op of just like a truly like creative environment, a truly creative sort of hub of entertainment and content where you are informed, you're entertained, and it's not built on the same systems and sort of infrastructure that other media companies have, you know, and that my company is kind of set up that way. Or like I own the LLC, no one else owns it, no one else has any sort of like rights. Like I mainly because like we don't make money. Like I don't pay Rob or Gary anything, but like that's not how it should be. And I think where I envision this sort of network going is where we have like 10, 12, 15 people here, and we're all creating content, and we're all trying to build something that is unique, that has value, that has substance to it. You know, that more than anything. You know, like when I go and look back on, let's say, the last 3 or 4 years of my media career, I think a lot of it's gonna be a weird show, guys. I'm just letting you all know that. I will eventually get to combat sports, and like I just don't want to get some shit off my chest. I feel like a lot of shit that I've created, a lot of shit that I've worked on has been largely like pointless, to be honest. Like a lot of it has been content or creative art, so to speak, that is very much in a vacuum. And like once like it is past that period of point, like it's gone. Like and no one cares about it, no one focuses on it. That's why I'm now focusing on this documentary series a lot. That's why I'm reading all these books right here. I wish I could show you all these books. Like that's why I'm reading all these books, because I want to create something that has more everlasting sort of value. And how I see that is a true like group effort, you know, and a lot of these sort of YouTube systems, YouTube companies are set up to where it's not a group effort. It's not really built towards like creating like content that lasts. It's built towards creating very finite content that is in and out and just for profit. Gary's here. Gary, I've been ranting for a bit. I apologize. Gary, how are you, man? It's been a while.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Gary.
I can't hear you.
Oh my God, Gary. I hope everyone realizes right now. I just saw this chat from Twitter saying, "How about them Clippers?" God damn it! Shout out to Paul George, man. Every show before we start out, Gary has to do this.
Gotcha.
Damn it! I so wanted your wife to have to come in here and be like, "Babe, help me."
We could have got her moment of fame. She gets a little camera shy sometimes.
That's okay. Jason, I'm just gonna do audio. Hey, that's fine, Jay. Like, hey, if you want to create content, if you want to just do something, like, I go for it. Like, I'm all for it.
I heard you talking about doing other additional shows besides combat sports. Does anyone want to do an NBA show?
Oh my God, please.
I mean, look, I don't know. I know the NBA well. I don't know it as well as I know boxing.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty knowledgeable in the NBA, especially the 90s NBA. But if there's a basketball-centric guy who can carry it, I would be an excellent wingman, I believe.
Gary, you do play an excellent wingman on this show. You are great for that role.
Thank
I will say you are perfect for that, like that Chewbacca role, right? Like it's amazing. Snoop's in the chat and YouTube communities are actually very fragmented. Matt, good point. They are. There are a few communities that I see of channels that sort of group together to create content, and it's awesome to see. But they're few and far between. And like, I don't know if you heard this last part, Gary, but like, think about like all the shit I used to do, like on like Name Redacted, or even like shit like I've done on this show. Like, a lot of it is not everlasting content. It's not evergreen content. It's not content that 3 years, 4 years on the line has value. And it's in a bubble. You know, like I feel like there's so much more we can do. There's so much more we can achieve here. And I feel like we're all very smart people. The people that listen to this show are smart. Why not draw on that? You know, why not create a community that I keep preaching about, right? Like we can just create that community. It's not hard, right? We can create that, in your mind, a libertarian community, right? We're all just in it together. We're all trying to help each other, and it's real communal in that effort, right? We all have our individual specialties, but we can come together to create a better system, a better network of entertainment, of culture, of substance. Like, I feel like that's just as needed.
If you need a stock market guy or someone who can tell you how to assert your rights when talking to the police, I'm a police kind of guy. I don't like the term cop block because I don't want to block the cops. I just don't want them to violate other people's rights. I want them to do their job. Does that make sense? Because they always use the term cop block. I don't like that phrase.
Here's where maybe me and you disagree on. I think the cops, like police departments by nature, are institutions that like intrude on people's rights. Like
it just inherently. Sure.
Yeah, like inherently. Because I'll be honest, Gary. Because you know we have this conversation a lot off here about how like you're not really like a libertarian in the American sense, right? You're this like more of a
I mean, voluntarist or anarcho-capitalist. I mean, like,
I wouldn't say you're not an ANCAP. I wouldn't say that. Maybe you were, but you're not
verging. All right, like libertarian is like the umbrella, right? And then like, what kind of libertarian are you?
Would you agree that, Gary, that we should have a political system that is a bottom-up structure of authority that has like direct democracy, to where like we don't create systems that naturally are oppressive and exploitive towards people? Like, do you think that's the ideal, right? We're talking about like ideal.
Well, the ideal is no government at all. The ideal is individual rule. I control my life, you control yours, as long as I don't hurt you, take your things, or break our contracts. We don't need to involve men who call themselves government in this at all. Do
you believe that communities have value?
Communities absolutely have value, especially voluntary communities. Like I live on a private road, right? We have everything that we contract and negotiate, right? Like we don't get services from the city that we don't negotiate ourselves. No, there's definitely, so like the problem is forced communication. When you force people who don't necessarily share values to work together, that, like, think about it like this, right? When you were in school and you teacher said, okay, turn your desk around and work in a group of 4 or 5 people, right? One person would do all the work, usually the loudest person, and the other 3 or 4 people would largely be ignored, or they'd be too shy and they'd keep themselves, or they whatever, right? So people, you get the most out of people when they align themselves with their kind of natural market and voluntary relationships. When you force people, like when you were a kid, I don't know if you had a kid that no one liked on their block and your mom would go make you play with him. It's like, I don't want to play with this kid, right? And so you didn't do it because you liked him. You did it because you didn't want to get punished, and your mom wanted you to play with him because no one. But there's a reason nobody else plays with him. It's because he's a bastard.
Gary, do you think that, and when it comes to sort of community decisions, how do they get, like, how do we decide as a community what type of road regulation we're going to have?
The smallest, the most communal, right? Like federal is the worst, then state's the next word. The smaller you can get that. Like I don't know, prostitution.
No,
right?
Let's get away from like the U.S. system. Let's talk about ideals here, because I think we can talk about ideas, right? Like you're a libertarian, you like ideas.
I like ideas.
You're an idea guy, right? Like we're talking about like ideal situations here, right? We're talking about like a sort of community oriented society, right? Not a government oriented society or a government hierarchy society, right? Where there's not political hierarchy, there's just the society, right? It's kind of what you envision. And I think like an anarcho-communist like me, or an anarcho-collectivist, I would probably more be defined as, we probably agree on like that's the ideal. But your system to like how that gets organized in any fashion is still sort of private enterprise and private corporations, right? While like for me, for example, sure.
Voluntary.
Yeah. Well, for me, for example, I would classify like we can have companies, we can have factories, we can, build roads, all that stuff, but it would be community oriented. It would be the community doing it. It would be sort of a, again, communal effort, a mutual aid effort, right? And I think this goes back to maybe the differencing of, and I think this might be a big difference in, let's say, ANCAP, anarcho-collectivist opinion, or libertarian and sort of modern anarchist sort of theory. I think my side views that people in their community naturally have like a debt to each other. Where like that's where like mutual aid comes into the theory. Where like we have to help out and support each other because like we're naturally indebted to each other. Like we're around each other. Like we need each other to survive. So therefore, we will work as a community. And the opposite would be more of an ANCAP perspective, where the community exists, but that is not the primary like modus operandi of the system. You have these corporations, private corporations, that would, in theory,
provide
for these services, and it would not be a community-owned venture, right? And walk me through, Gary, why that ideal is better than my ideal. Because private corporations, just to sort of round out my opinion, and then I'll let you go, right? Like I view private corporations as just as oppressive as, let's say, political hierarchies. When we talk about economic hierarchies, they are just as oppressive, if not more, especially nowadays, as political hierarchies. And there's a lot of intersectionalism of those two issues, right? Sort of political and economic hierarchies. How do you see your system like being able to avoid that? Because private enterprise, private corporations, capitalism, right? It still has a economic hierarchy.
Sure, but that economic hierarchy. So you guys were talking in the chat before about how capitalism is cancer, and I think that's why I like the term free market, right? Because capitalism has a connotation that's what we do in America. There are countries, and I don't want to start a whole thing, that are much better at capitalism: Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, who have much freer markets than the U.S. The most you're talking about,
but a lot of those countries, especially like Switzerland, is still like a social democratic state where there's like huge social safety nets. For example,
it's a capitalist country with a social safety net. Yeah,
but in an ANCAP world, that social safety net wouldn't exist.
It would be voluntary. It would be charity. It would be private charity. It would be
yes,
right.
And that's I think a little bit the disconnect for like my side and your side. So I just want walk me through that. I'm curious.
Okay, so I'm fundamentally opposed to the initiation of force, right? Like, so long as you don't hurt anyone or take their stuff or break your contract, then, if it doesn't break my back or pick my pocket, then what difference does it make, right? So you're entitled to do whatever you want. And I would never stop you. I would never use force. I might use persuasion, right, to tell you you tasted bad, but I would never use force to stop you from doing what you want. Mm-hmm. And that force, that's government, right? Like if you go to the store and you don't want to pay for the high-end bacon, you don't have to buy it. You could buy something else, right? But if you don't want to pay for President Trump's wall, you don't want to pay for the military-industrial complex, too bad, you're going to pay for it, right? So, that
again, let's get away from the American system, because we both agree the American system is deeply wrong, and we're talking about ideals. My ideal does not include a concept where we have a representative democracy or republic, because a representative republic is deeply undemocratic. Like our college is deeply undemocratic. The way our checks and balances are set up are deeply undemocratic.
Sure. So I was like, one thing on that, right? So if we're gonna have elected officials, then they should be voted on. Okay. You should vote on the officials. Voting on laws, right? Like you would say, laws should be voted on, right? Like if we want to, that
I'm one of those people like Congress should never vote on laws. That should be all up to a general election, and it's a popular vote.
Now you have person A voting on the rights of person B, right? Like, so if 51% of the people think that you get arrested unless you wear a green shirt, and 51% of the people vote on that, now it's against the law. Now we're gonna take you and punish you, lock you in a cage, steal your money if you wear a green shirt. But who is harmed by you wearing that green shirt? Nobody. So
but let's be honest, like that example is drastically ridiculous. Like that's not a real world example at all. Like that's not even like that just doesn't exist.
But at 51%, I understand it's a hyperbolic example. But what I'm just saying, okay, I want to grow a certain plant in my backyard. 51% of people said I can't grow that. Now I'm a criminal because I grew a plant in my backyard that people didn't want me to grow. Well, who was harmed by me growing that plant?
I don't think that would ever happen.
The people would never vote against. Let me ask you this:
would people ever vote? Do you think, Gary, honestly, that people would vote against people planting vegetables in their backyard?
What about marijuana?
As we have seen, that the popular vote and the popularity is that we want to legalize it.
Right. Today, but you don't think if you went back, let's say your parents' era, you don't think your parents would have voted against it? Not your parents' generation.
I think societies that are naturally oppressive, if left open to direct democracy, will still be oppressive, of course. Like in terms of like the mentality, right? When we talk about like, let's say the civil rights era, right? When like overwhelmingly, I think it was like 60-something%, like 68% of people opposed the Civil Rights Act. I forget the percentage of people that opposed like Martin Luther King and like his protest movement, right? But it was a majority, right? We're talking about like backward societies, of course, but we also talk, let's say, about like real world examples. We talk about, let's say, Kurdistan, a anarcho collectivist state right now, right?
See, you know international politics way better than I do. I can tell you about markets. I can tell you which countries have free markets, what countries have free trade. I don't know international politics like you. That's why, like, I'm going to believe you. You could tell me anything right now, and I'm going to take you at your word.
I'll send you if you want. If you want, I can play some audio if you want as well. I mean, you might worry about copyright, but like, who gives a fuck? I have a Fair Use Act disclaimer in my description. Fuck off. But when we talk about why was I going to bring that up? What were you saying? Sorry, I lost track of that. Why was I going to bring up Kurdistan?
I don't.
What were you saying? What were you saying for that? And Gary, I know we're both bad at memory.
We were talking about like if I said if someone wants to grow a plant that the government frowns on, and now I'm a criminal because
for example, Kurdistan, the Kurds, right? The Kurdish people, ethnic collection of people going from Syria all the way to Iran, Turkey, and Iraq. They, from a sort of societal, cultural standpoint, have definitely been an enlightened society, especially obviously within that region, right? They're a deeply feminist society where I forget the exact setup. Again, I wish I might just get the audio and play it with some Dr. David Graeber talking about this. And like half of their assembly is women, and they have a all women's police force. It's very interesting how they set up. But in terms of their structure, all sort of economic enterprise is owned by the small communities, and they can basically have free self-regulation, right? The only issues that they will ever have to go to like the sort of small centralized assembly is matters of self-defense and matters of moral issues. But the assembly has basically, how do you describe it? I think the communities that sort of the bottom up structure, the communities have veto power. So let's say like the overall assembly has a vote of, let's say 51 to 49 of green shirts are going to prison, right? To use your example. the communities will say, no, we don't want that. You overruled us, right? And there are certain issues that are just off the table. Like they already have like certain moral issues that, for reasons that, because some communities might self-regulate and do their own thing, and they don't want that in terms of, let's say, because of the region they're in, let's say age of consent laws, something like that. They have rules like these rules are just a matter of fact, and that they came to that due to enlightenment. They came to that due to, hey, we read a bunch of feminist literature in the Middle East, and we decided we're going to make more of a feminist equal state, right? And when we take that model to, let's say, right now in the U.S., it might be very problematic to some issues, right? Because our society is deeply unenlightened, right? I definitely have an issue with that. Like Karl Marx and other people were definitely right often about how you can't have a true social revolution or a people's revolution without the people becoming enlightened. Like, in fact, if that was to happen, if you get a revolution without the people becoming enlightened, that's where you get sort of a reactionary counter-revolution that comes in place. That's where you get sort of the monarchy being restored in France and Napoleon Bonaparte becoming emperor of France. It's sort of the reactionary forces, right? That's how you get neo-colonialism in certain countries like Haiti with Papa Doc and his revolution, right? And certain other places. But largely speaking, when we talk about the ideal, right? When we talk about when we get there, right? On the way to getting there, we enlighten the society. How do we do that? We obviously have to definitely change our education system drastically. I think we have to open up the sort of the spectrum of philosophy of politics that we have our kids, our teenagers read. I think it's important that even that they read, let's say, ANCAP stuff that I don't agree with, right? I think it's important that they read that shit. I think the guy that starts with an R, he was a big ANCAP writer. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of him at all. But hey, I think that people should read that. I think we should have that in our like school curriculum. So like at 16, people should be reading this stuff more often, because we need to become a little more politically enlightened when it comes to our conversations, and we're just not. We're drastically not.
Like people like Rothbard, they get the free market, like they get the liberty part of it, but then they like lose all moral structure. Like, I'm not telling you that prostitution is good. I think it's horrible, right? But if that's what you want to do with your body, then you should do that. Someone like Mario Rothbard would be like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with prostitution? I'm like, there was a lot wrong with that. I just don't want to put you in jail for doing it or paying for it, right? But like, and the same thing with like Ayn Rand. Like, if half of Ayn Rand is great, the other half is just completely bonkers, right? And then you have like,
well, there's a time that's great, you know.
The
like
Christian right swears by it. It's like, do you understand her objectivism? So she would say, if you have a choice of getting on the bus and the bus runs over a person, but it gets you to work on time, or the bus stops after it hits the person and takes the person to the hospital, and you get in trouble for being late, you should just go straight to the work and not get into. That's what she would say, right? Because altruism, she said, was insanity, right? Like helping people, like that's not what libertarianism is about, right? But like, people,
yeah, Ayn Rand's like just like proto-fascist in a degree, right? Like it just kind of is.
And you hear like conservatives on the right, like praise. It's like, yeah, she's a free market person, and that's good. But the other half of it, the objectivism, the altruism stuff is like, guys, you really did. I know John Gall, Atlas Shrugged is 1,500 pages, and no one's ever got to the end of it. But like, you know, maybe at least get the Reader's Digest version of the book before you start thinking like this. These are all around brilliant ideas, right? Like, I can agree with her economically and think socially she's out of her mind, right? Like, I mean, that's possible.
No, I guess I'll say this. I don't disagree with you in what you're saying, because I think like even like you can take away like stuff from like Wealth of Nations that it has an extreme value, right? Like even like Marx did, for example, he took a lot from Adam Smith. Adam Smith set the bedrock for like analysis on capitalism, right? Like there's a lot to take from that. Even like ANCAP stuff when it comes to like individualism. You can take away some stuff from that and apply it to like leftist politics. So I definitely don't disagree with that. And like plus there's stuff in like leftist politics that I don't necessarily agree with, right? Like I'm not a true like Marxist Leninist at all. I'm more of an anarcho-collectivist nowadays. But Gary, I want to get back to sort of the ideal, right, of these systems of force that you described, right? How like government is force, right? Is how you described it.
Right.
I might have summarized it.
If you said, Gary, define me government in one word, I would use the monopolized use of force. That's exactly how I would describe it. Everything they want is under threat of, everything they get is the threat of force or the actual use of, war, imprisonment, taxation. Mm-hmm. It's all under the threat of force or actual force, like war and arresting people.
Now, would you say that the economic force of capitalism or sort of economic hierarchies within capitalism is destructive?
When you combine it with the state like we do here, yes. Like you can't have a monopoly. There's never been a monopoly that hasn't gotten government handouts, that hasn't gotten advantages from the state, right? Mm-hmm. And that combination of is actually like what fascism is, right? Like if you go back to Sicily, right, in Italy, you had like the government saying you're going to buy these products from these companies, and these companies are going to charge X, Y, and Z. That is like the worst thing you can have, because now you're buying a product that is approved by the government, meeting their standards, and you can't get it anywhere else. It's the combination of the two. I would say remove the government. You would say remove
both.
Okay.
Or at least, because here's where like we get into like this funny like word games here, right? Like not to say me, like you or me, but like anarchists by default are both anti-capitalist and anti-state, right? But there is such thing as an anarchist state. They exist. We've had them. Kurdistan, for example, is one that exists. I can play the audio in a bit if you want me to. That David Graeber describes sort of the systems that they have. But I think that all governments that we have sort of at least existed in, those that watch the show, we all exist most likely in a Western civilized society or state, right? We, U.S., Canada, somewhere in Europe or Australia, right? For Liam Roscoe listening right now, like we live in systems of both political hierarchies and economic hierarchies, because our government, to use your word, is deeply undemocratic. Most of our governments are sort of representational republics at the very least. We have sort of parliamentary governments if you're in the UK, or if you're in Australia, I think is a parliamentary government. We still, in some countries, you still have monarchs to a degree, right? So like we still have like extreme levels of political hierarchies, right? Where you have people at the very top dictating everything for people at the bottom. You have the top 10, 1%, whatever you want to say, that's dictating everything for the bottom 99%, right? That's a massive issue. But similar for an anarchist perspective, in capitalism, you have that same issue. And I think it's like from a statistical perspective, empirical perspective, undeniable that that is true, right, Gary? That you have a top percentage dictating everything from an economical perspective to everyone at the bottom. And in order to get rid of that, you have to give power to everyone equally, both economic power and political power. And that's how we achieve sort of equality. Because if we have still economic hierarchies, and let's say political equality, air quotes, the economic hierarchies will become the new political hierarchies, in my opinion. That's sort of the criticism I have of anarcho-capitalism, is like the idea of being anti-state is great, but it's a half measure. It's like being anti-capitalism without being anti-state. That's USSR at the very worst, right? That's Maoist China, right? Like that's the very worst of it, right? So I think you need to get rid of both. You need to do that in order for everyone to live a better life. And what that system looks like in that sort of anarchist version changes from time to time. I mean, Neolithic tribes lived in sort of an anarchist state, of course, We have, sort of indigenous people living in anarchist societies. There's a famed study or situation in Madagascar in the early 2000s where the government retreated a lot of its sort of institutions and power from the island, and the people kind of didn't devolve into chaos. They sort of set up their own sort of communal systems and lived and functioned just fine. And obviously Kurdistan is the newest experiment in anarchism, and they've been around for 4 years now. And
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, right? So let's say I'm me, and I'm just born lucky. My dad moves out of his house. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents die, and he lives on an oil mine, and they give him the oil mine. And my mom's parents die, and they live on a diamond field, and they give me the diamond field. Now, just because of who I am, right? Because of the snatch I was born from, I'm wealthy beyond belief, right?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Okay, so that's inherited wealth. I didn't do anything to earn it, right? So I don't want to say, well, I work for it. That's not the conversation I'm trying to have. But it is rightfully mine. It was given to me. Who should control that, right? Because I'm just naturally going to be better than 99.99% of better, or financially than 99.99% of people, just because of who I was born to. So, right, I'm going to be in a position of economic control because of my natural kind of territory, right? My so who should control my wealth? I mean, that's I guess the question, because I'm gonna have that wealth because it was inherited to me from
in this thought experiment, right? There's a lot of sort of unverified variables, but let's just go with the thought experiment. I like this. In my version of this thought experiment, the government, right, the state that would be involved in this discussion would be one that I talk about, a bottom-up structure that is direct democracy, right? You might have some sort of centralized assembly, but they really don't have much power. They kind of just write laws, but they don't enforce the laws. They don't vote on the laws. They're just sort of a body to where you can pay someone to work on politics while you work on other ventures. And that could be a much more revolving door than what it is now because of that nature. And you have, let's say, somebody within that state, within that, borders, even though anarchists really don't believe in borders, and they inherited all this, right? I would say that the state would probably, if this guy, let's say, has, because it's hard to say, like in an anarchist like government, that you would have private ownership, because private ownership would already be gone in that version, right? So, like, most likely in this thought experiment, we're more talking about like a social democratic state, where like you have a representational government that wants to have sort of a progressive tax policy to make sure that you give a good percentage of your wealth after a certain amount, right? Let's say it's $5 million. So after $5 million, everything else you get taxed 90% or 80% on every dollar, right? Let's say that's what it is. That's one idea. That's a common social democratic theory. I think that's a little bit of half measure. Also, you have to be worried about monopoly and monopsony power, right? So let's say you have a monopoly on the industry in this region.
In that region, right.
Right, okay. In that region. We would have to talk about, breaking you up and sort of breaking up into different companies and stuff like that. That might be something we talk about as sort of a government perspective, right? Government.
But you're still going to have to use government to take what's mine, right? Like, that was given to me. That was inherited to me. Again, I'm not saying it's, because I hate the conversation, well, I worked hard for it. Well, that's not really relevant, right? Like, whether I won it, it was given to me, I found it in the backseat of a taxi cab. None of that's relevant, right? My property is my property.
Like, I get your, let's say, frustration at that, right? I want to use that word, the hesitation about that idea. But it goes back to my sort of philosophy and like an anarchist philosophy. Like, the society is naturally indebted to each other. Like, if we live in this society together, we have an obligation to each other to take care of each other, right? That's just my like overall philosophy, right? That's how an anarchist would think, right? Or an anarcho-collectivist, not an anarcho-capitalist, right?
I agree, right? And I'm going to throw a twist in it because I'm a Christian. I have a moral obligation to love my neighbor as myself, period. Yes. Right? Even if that person hates me, I still have a moral obligation to love him. So I would agree with you. I would think we would just go about it differently, right? I think I'm more suited to take care of my neighbor than having the government come and take my money and redistribute it.
But here's the thing, Gary. We know for a fact when it comes to like generational wealth to that degree, most likely you do not manage it well. Like, that's a a long running trend now with like dynastic economic families, right? At a certain point, it stops being well run by them, and they have to give over ownership to a board of directors to some degree, right? Like that happens.
We're talking about extreme wealth now. Hundreds of millions, if not billions. We're talking about that kind of wealth.
Your example was extreme wealth.
Okay.
Diamond mined, oil reserve.
That's true.
You gave me the Elon Musk shit. Like,
yeah, I would say, and none of it was any of my doing. Right, I was just born in the right place at the right time.
And in my world, especially, let's say even like the half measure between us is the social democratic world, right? You still get at least 5 million, no matter what, off the top, right? Like that's, I think, sort of the metric that I think like Sanders has in his plan, right? Is that like at 5 million mark, you would get taxed. I think I forget what his tax rate would be. It'd be like 77%. He changed it to, but obviously that's not happening now. But even in like, let's say the anarchist society, like you would still, let's say, have ownership of it to a degree. You would just have to share ownership with other people. You would still make money off of it. You can still run it. Like no one's taking you from the company, but the economic hierarchy where you generate so much wealth off of it when the labor is clearly not from you, it's from the thousands of laborers in the mines, right? In this hypothetical, we would have to share that more equally so that those people are not in destitution. That's what like the overall goal would be, is that this economic wealth gets divvied up and distributed up as equally as we can so that people are taken care of. Because right now, due to capitalism, that just cannot happen because the system is designed to squeeze out profits anywhere you can.
Sure, right. And if you're a publicly traded company and you do something that's not in the best interest of the shareholders, they can have you fired. They can sue you, right? So I understand what you're saying, right? If you're saying, well, I didn't want to do this because it was immoral or it made me feel yucky and it cost shareholders money. Every one of them can have you fired for sure, and they most likely can sue you too. So I understand what you're saying, like,
and like you said right there, like there are systems of force within these capitalist structures that can hurt anyone, right? Even the owner to a degree, right? Like you said, like there's a board of directors in a lot of private enterprises that have sort of like, to some degree, ultimate authority even over like the CEO or owner, right? And I think from my perspective, that like even shouldn't exist. Like it should be as equal as possible. You should have an equal say in the company to some degree. Like let's say, I know this is a plan for the UK for Jeremy Corbyn when he was running. I liked it a lot. Again, more of a social democratic half measure, right? Let's say if you are the owner of a company, right, and you want to sell it, you want to move it, whatever it may be. The law would be that the workers have first rights to the company. So if you want to sell it, they have first rights to collectively buy the company. If you want to move it, they have first rights to deny that. And I thought that was a really nice, like interesting way of dealing with that economic coercion, the economic hierarchy.
Now, in this example, am I the CEO or am I the founder? Do I own the business or am I just in charge of the business?
Good distinction. You are the person that owns it, not the CEO. Because in the CEO, you can still work, obviously, if it changes ownership or whatever like that, if it moves, like that's not an issue. The owner, if you're the owner, you want to sell it, the workers have first rights. And let's say, obviously, they can't buy it. In Jeremy Corbyn's plan, the government would come in and give them a loan, and they would work off the loan, and then they would have, obviously, complete ownership of the company after that. That would be the theory. I think Germany does that to a degree. I think a few other countries do that to a degree. But I like that half measure. It's not the perfect thing, but in terms of like trying to deal with that economic hierarchy, the economic force of power, right? Because there is a monopoly of force within capitalism, just like there is within our current governmental structures, right? We do have monopolies of force. And the monopolies of force are not to the masses. It's to a very small few, of course.
But like, so in your force in capitalism would be the CEO, the board of directors, whoever is in charge. That would be the force that you're saying.
Yes.
But you voluntarily decided, you voluntarily agreed to work for them, right?
But here's the thing. Yes, you voluntarily work for an individual company, but that doesn't matter. You have to work. right? Like if
And then
like
I'm going to say, but you don't have to work for me. There's other places you can work.
it doesn't matter because the same system is at pretty much every company. We talk about the corporatization of America, right? Like the mom and pop store where we can go in and work and make a good living, and it's like the owner and everything like that. Like that is few and far between nowadays. Like you work in franchises, you work in large corporate structures mainly. Like that's how it is.
I want to like Amazon and Walmart, which employ I think more than any other private companies, right? They couldn't exist, or it would have to change their pay structure without the taxpayer, right? And this sounds weird, but you basically subsidize Walmart and Amazon so that they can pay their employees $10 an hour. You pay for their food stamps, you pay for their health insurance, right? Because if that didn't exist, Walmart and Amazon would have to pay them more, otherwise no one would work there because they couldn't, right? They physically wouldn't be able to work there. So Amazon and Walmart rely on the taxpayers to subsidize them. So when you think the Walton family and Bezos, you're subsidizing them so they can pay people what that would say is less than a living wage.
You are half true there, right? So obviously these massive corporations get huge government subsidies to function, right? Like Elon Musk has got like how many billions of dollars, right? Like this is not like a new thing. Like that is an issue. Obviously, we already have a redistribution of wealth. It's the bottom 50% giving money to the top 1% over and over and over again, both through our labor and the value of our labor, and also through our tax money, right? But I will say I push back on the idea that like social safety nets are a deterrent to higher wages. Like that's kind of just an excuse that like, no offense, but like corporatists point out, like they wanted to say like, if you got rid of the like social safety nets, like we would pay these people more. That's not true. They wouldn't. It's capitalism. Like they would still try to squeeze out the most profits possible. If there is no control over a company making them pay people more, then why would they voluntarily pay people more? That's not going to happen.
Because
that's
no one would work there. You'd have to go work somewhere else, right? Like if I literally can't.
Gary, every company has this issue. So like you say, go work somewhere else. But Gary, I go work at Buffalo Wild Wings. I hate it there. I'm going to go work at Chili's. I'm going to work at Applebee's. It's the same issue, right? I go work at Amazon. It's the same issue. Like just moving to a company doesn't change the systems of economic oppression and coercion. The monopoly of force companies.
I would argue that without government aid, without government benefit, right? Companies like Amazon and Walmart, as we know them, wouldn't exist. They wouldn't be able to operate as they do without government handouts.
When you mean government handouts, please be specific. You're not talking about like Medicare or Social Security. You're talking about the government giving them a giant golden parachute of millions.
A parachute. Sure. Medicare and Social Security is different because everyone's paid into it, right? Like that's different.
You're not talking about universal programs for people that are welfare programs that are unrelated to Amazon.
They're not. I'm talking about both, right? I'm talking about both. I'm talking about the tax benefits they get, right? Like Amazon pays zero in taxes. GE pays zero in taxes. Like doesn't make. If you're gonna pay zero in taxes, why doesn't everyone pay? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm talking, and then you have the social programs which allow them to pay people $10 an hour because they can just get.
That's not true. That's fundamentally not true. Like you can't find that anywhere where like that is just factual. Like that, there's empirical link between social programs.
It's a logical conclusion, right? I mean, go ahead.
Gary, I mean, come on here. We're talking about these multi-billion-dollar companies that don't pay taxes, that get huge subsidiaries from the government. If Social Security didn't exist for their workers or Medicare didn't exist for their workers, anything like that, they wouldn't magically pay them more. Like their workers being destitute or in poverty at this point doesn't make them pay them more. So why would them being in more destitution and poverty make them pay them more? That just is not factual. When you look at the history of capitalism, nowhere is that true.
I said it's true in countries that do it better than us. I don't like to use the word. It's true in Singapore.
The countries you just mentioned have massive. Okay, the countries you mentioned have massive social safety nets. These countries you mentioned don't have any. They have better social programs than we do. They have more universal programs than we do, not less.
Switzerland didn't have a federal minimum wage up until like 5 or 6 years ago. They didn't have everyone living below the poverty level. They had almost no one living below the poverty level.
But Gary, they also have a lot of other things like economic grants that are universal for people that want to go into the arts. Like they give out money to people that are in between jobs. Like they have other programs that support people that make the minimum wage not as much because they regulate the companies in terms of not necessarily regulating the companies. They tax the companies enough to where they can have these social safety nets. That's what it is. The Nordic model is the same way. Because that's a mixed economy, right? You have capital, you get private enterprise in those countries, but it's
a capitalist country with a big welfare, big safety net. Yeah,
that's social democracy, right? So like the idea that like these countries are examples of your theory are just wrong. They do have massive welfare programs. They do have massive social safety nets. So I don't see where your point is valid in terms of history and in terms of reality. I think it's a little bit of an ahistorical point.
My point was that,
especially about the government subsidiaries, because like Amazon being taxed $0 and getting millions or billions of taxpayer money is not what I think is right, obviously, right? But that's not the same as let's say the universal program of Social Security, and that being an excuse for these companies to not pay people more. These companies just don't want to pay people more.
Social Security and Medicare is fundamentally different because everyone was forced to pay into it. So when it's your turn to collect, we have like one of my 3 rules: don't hurt people, don't take the stuff onto your contracts, right? Like you paid into it. Now it's your turn to collect. If you live to be 300 years old, well, that's too bad for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I don't like to call those like, I guess they are safety nets, right? But they are. But they're fun. Like same thing with unemployment insurance, right? It's like saying your car insurance is a safety net. It's like, okay, it's when I paid for it though, right? It's funded by me. I already funded it. And we made a deal that at 65, I can collect. Now, you didn't say I had to die by the time I was 100. So if I keep living, you have to keep paying me.
No, I think obviously like car insurance is a little bit different because it's more of like a direct you paying into it and you getting a service out of it that's a little bit more than what you pay into it, right?
Social Security was originally set up to be that way, which is why you got a Social Security number. It was supposed to be your money going into a box and then grows interest. And then when you retire, you get it. Obviously, that's not the case anymore.
True. And that's largely because we took money out of Social Security to balance the budget back. Was it Clinton's administration, right?
I mean, yeah.
Neoliberal politics. Fucking hell. But anyways, digressing. What was I going to say to you? I think that we largely do agree, Gary, to be honest. I think you just envision like sort of corporate structures to be more benevolent than they are. Like you view governmental structures as very malevolent, right? You view them as very hostile structures, right? And I view, I think other people view, not everyone, but other people view that economic structures are just as malevolent. I'm sorry, man. My mouth is fucking cotton mouth right now because I need some water. But anyways, I still don't understand why you have that faith in corporations. Like why you have that faith in the economic monopoly of force. Because when you say like you can just go to another company, like that company still has a monopoly of force within that corporate structure. Like whoever's at the top has a monopoly of force on the people at the bottom. They can tell you where to show up, what to dress, what to say. You don't have the same rights within a private corporation as you step outside the private corporation. Like freedom of speech rights definitely aren't the same within private corporation, right? Like it just seems like for someone that understands the issues rightly of, let's say, the inequalities of our modern governmental structure, I don't understand how you miss the economic side to it. Because I feel like it's a dual side to the coin to an issue.
Like I'll give you an UPS and FedEx basically do the same thing, right? They offer the same service. Every year when they do these surveys, what's the best company to work for? FedEx is always on the list. What's the worst company to work for? UPS is always on the list, right? But they offer the same service, right? So if you're working for UPS and we're gonna lose UPS as a sponsor now, right? And I don't like the way I'm being treated by UPS. They make me work 80 hours a week. They won't give me any pay raises. They make me work. My arm is falling off. I look across the street. I can do the same thing at FedEx, and they'll treat me like a valued employee. I'm going to go over to FedEx, right? You don't have that option with government. Like I voted for Gary Johnson. I can't say, okay, I don't like this Trump thing. I want Gary Johnson now. You don't get that, right? You get what you're given, right? And most schools, I know some schools you can go to different schools in there, but most schools, you're given a school based on where you live, and that's it, whether you like it or not. Now you can pay extra money for a private school, but the vast majority of people don't have that money.
No, I think your perception that you can just go and get a job anywhere, I think is a little bit misconstrued as well. Like we have 40 million people unemployed right now.
We're also in the middle of a pandemic. I understand.
But Gary, like, we've been having since 0807, right? At the very least, we've had massive unemployment. Yeah, it went down. It had a massive drop at one point, right? But we still have massive levels of unemployment. We still have 500,000 people that are permanently homeless right now. Like the idea that people can just go and get a job anywhere is not so simple. Like I can only go get jobs around my area, right? Like proximity is an issue, right? Then you have competition is an issue. Like we have jobs that have only a certain amount of positions that can only pay a certain amount because everyone at the top has to get paid. Everyone at the bottom can't get paid. And as you said, like we're in a massive recession, massive depression, massive pandemic right now. And the idea of like you can just go and get a job is not so simple. And you might say like, oh, it's just right now. But Gary, like, I think it's pretty obvious that like our capitalistic structure is prone to crises. Like within the last 12 years, we've had 2 massive economic depressions. Within the last 100 years, we've had like 4 or 5, if you include like the 70s and
the 70s, the interest rate crisis, and then you had obviously September 11th, and then a couple of years later, you had the housing market, and now a decade or I guess 12 years later, you have this. No, I understand. Like I get it, right? But I don't like. I'm not trying to call it like I hate America. I don't hate America. Okay, I'm not like I don't. Right? It's got 1,000,001 zits. It's got 1,000,001 watch. I don't hate America. I swear I don't. I love it.
To America, death.
I don't feel that way at all. Right? Like, does it have 1,000,001 things wrong with it? Absolutely. Okay. But like, so when I said America doesn't do capitalism as good as other countries, right? Like there are freer markets. That's why I like to use the term free markets, right? Because when you say capitalism, people think cronyism, people think corporatism, right? Free markets. There are other countries who do that better. You can just go look up the economic freedom index, right? U.S. isn't in the top 10, any of them, not in the top 10.
I was going to say something to you, but I forgot. Somebody in the chat made a comment, and I just wanted to address it really fast, saying if all major corporations became state-run with those rights, then no one will ever have anywhere new. I don't think anywhere I said that all companies would become state-run. I want to. I think I even specified very early on, like if you have capitalism, the right stance to have, in my opinion, to be both anti-capitalist and anti-state. Right? If you have just anti-capitalist, that's how you get sort of a authoritarian communist regime. For those that want to talk about those, that's where you run into that issue, right? So, for most, let's say, anarcho-collectivists, anarcho-syndicalists, anarcho-communists, libertarian communists, all that sort of spectrum of politics, right there. The idea is not for it to all be state-run. The idea is that all these companies are majority owned, people owned. So like the workers own the company. The workers own the means of production. That's like a classic tenet of Marxism, that the workers own the means of production, right? The issue is when you think that the workers are the state and therefore the state should have ownership of corporations. No, there should be a divide there. Like people can own the corporations. It just has to be majority owned. It has to be where everyone owns the company. The state has to be where everyone has equality and say within the state when it comes to legislation. I think when it comes to sort of like foreign policy to a degree, or to a large degree, I think it should be all sort of direct democracy when it comes to that point, because people should have a right when it comes to like, should we go to war in Libya? Should we go bomb Sudan? You know, should we go bomb Yemen? We don't have any right in that, right? And like you've said, Gary, numerous times, and you're absolutely right about it, our money goes to these government subsidiaries, to Raytheon, right, to build bombs, and then our taxpayer money goes to buying those bombs that we help build to go bomb other people thousands of miles away for oil, right? Like that is naturally very wrong. Why is that wrong? Because we don't have economic and political power. We don't.
I don't agree with anything Bernie Sanders has ever said in his whole life, except for this one thing. It was, I forget who he was talking to, but it was
anything, everything. Really?
I mean, reasonable people can always find things they agree on, disagree. So like I was being hyperbolic again, right? Okay. But he's pretty anti-war, right? He was against the Iraq War, right? So
yeah, we should.
One.
The Iraq War was a lie.
Got that right. But he was saying, so I think it was Raytheon, right? I
think it was Raytheon.
It was, do you know what I'm talking about here? Do you know what I'm going to say here? Where he said, what does the Secretary of Defense make? And it was like 250,000. He's like, Raytheon is a private company, but 95% of their business comes from one customer, the U.S. military. So basically it's a public company, right? Like they 95% of their funding comes from one company. Do you know what their CEO makes? And it's like, it was over $20 million a year. So that's taxpayer money. Why is the tax? You can say it's not, but you can say they're a private company, but they have predominantly one customer. So why is the taxpayer paying this CEO $20 million when the Secretary of Defense made 200 or 250, whatever it was? Like, why is he paying, what is that, 100 times more? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
the military industrial complex is insane, man. It's insane. And the fact that, like, I think, what was it, 1990, I think was when government institutions were finally audited, or were allowed to be audited, right? Because that wasn't a thing before. Pentagon refused famously for like, what was it, like 15, 20 years, right? I think they finally got audited when, what, 2013, 14, whenever it was, right?
Yeah, it was in the Obama administration. I don't remember what year it was.
I don't remember when it was, but obviously they didn't. They failed. They failed the audit completely. And what did they do? What did they get in return? An increase in their budget. That's insane. That's insane. Like, that should not be happening. But anyways, Gary, let's jump off of this because I think we agree on a lot. We do. Yeah, I think.
You want to talk some boxing? I wanted to talk some boxing.
Yeah, let's talk some boxing. Somebody else was saying in the chat, Jay is saying that we should talk some boxing. So we're talking some boxing now. But I really like that talk, Gary. I'll be honest. That was a lot of fun. And I know you like dreading talking politics with me, but that was a lot of fun. I know you were afraid to get mad. You didn't get mad at all, Gary. I'm really proud of you. You should show your wife this video and be like, see, I can do it.
I don't, again, like, I know economics better than I know international politics. Like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I know what goes on. Like, I don't follow international politics. I follow a lot more. Yeah, but like, I don't follow international politics. Like you were doing the show with Foogatti, we talking about every leader in every Central American country. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, when I say like Salvador Allende being like the first like democratically elected like South American president, being like ruthlessly overthrown in a CIA coup, like, you don't go, oh, that's not real. Like, I've never heard about that. You go, I haven't heard about that, but that sounds like what the CIA does. You know, that's the difference, right? Like, you have common sense stuff. You may not know about it. You may be like ignorant to it to a degree, but like you're not stupid. Like, you go like, oh, yeah. I
like to think I'm reasonably intelligent.
Yeah. Look up Moses.
I think if you lined up all the people in the world, smartest to dumbest, I'd like to think I'm closer to the smartest than I am the dumbest.
I would say so as well.
I like to think that I could be wrong.
For any of those that want to like go up on like research any of this stuff, David Graeber is who you should research. He passed away just a few weeks ago, tragically, and so rest in peace to him. He was a professor at Yale University back in the early 2000s. Phenomenal source information. Gary, you would love his work on debt. Like he did an entire book on like the history of debt in economics, and he has a talk with I think Google on YouTube. Go check that out. You would love it. To be honest, I think you would just.
When did debt become
not left?
Yeah. When did debt become leverage? Right? He's a leverage buyout specialist.
Oh, you know Graeber?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out there a little bit.
No,
Gary.
I don't. I never heard of him before.
Oh.
Let me
you would like him a lot. Yeah, refresh it really fast. Jonathan saying, thanks for the response, Matt. I have a problem with the balance of freedom rights and how they can be taken and given and how to be in order to exist. A right being given to someone may actually invade my personal liberties. That's absolutely true. That's why, like, and when we talk about like what that system should be like, I always view it should be democratic. When we talk about like systems of order, right? Like there have to be systems of order in society. And this is probably the last point I'm going to make. They're like the idea of like a old school, like anarchist perspective, like pure chaos, no government, no anything. It just people fending for themselves, Mad Max style, right? Like that's not reality, right? Like you have to have systems of order, but the systems of order have to be democratic, right? I think most people can agree that democracy is a good thing, right? The idea that we all have a equal say and vote per se, or equal speech when it comes to the rights of our community, the actions of our community, the economics of our community. And that's how we sustain rights, because most likely the majority of people will intact their rights. If people have economic and political power, then guess what? They will want to keep that. So the idea of like oppressing people, of exploiting people becomes less likely, because you create a society where naturally mutual aid, communal living become like a priority. They become just this social, cultural norm. And we don't have that now. Like I was talking about this with somebody the other day about how often do you go and talk to your neighbors? Like most people don't talk to their neighbors. Most people don't talk to people on their commutes, at work. Like we go to our cubicle, we go through our job, and we go through it. We go through the system, and we tragically die at the end of it after being exploited and oppressed.
You need to come to Texas, bro. I understand what you're saying, right? Because I lived in New York for 10 years. You don't talk to anyone, especially on the subway. First time on the subway. Hey, how's it going? Look, you get 12 heads. Like,
oh, you can't do that.
Crazy person over there. Don't even look at him, right? I get it, in Texas, we're friends.
But you live in a small town a little bit. That's the difference.
Yeah, sure. And right where you live, and like on the East Coast, is most of the people live in big cities, and I get it. Like I do. Like I lived in New York for a long time. You don't talk to anyone, right? You talk to your inner circle, and that's it, right?
Yeah. I
come back here, and we have cornhole tournaments. Like everyone blocks the neighborhoods over. Like everyone comes, and we're just.
But, I mean, the difference is like when you live in like a massively like urbanized society, you're more.
I get it.
You're more like in like the rat race of life. But anyways, digressing. Let's get to some boxing. Gary, what are you going to talk about for boxing? I mean, it's been a minute. What's on the news? I forget.
I mean, the news is Showtime. Espinosa said that he'd be eager to talk to Canelo if his deal with Golden Boy. I mean, that's not really earth-shattering. I'm sure they all would. But it shows a dedication to boxing. They're willing to spend, right? Like, I would imagine they're not going to say, hey, I'd like to offer you $5 million to fight someone, right? You know, if you're talking to Canelo, you have an interest in boxing long-term, I would think.
They might say here's $5 million guaranteed, but you get pay-per-view. Like that might be the difference, right? Like,
yeah,
the benefit of the DAZN deal was like, you're not really gonna just like generate huge subscriber gains and like make money off of that. Like that was never the goal with Canelo. He was always going to be at the very least, or at the very best, I should say, a loss leader, right? Like he was always going to be that to a degree, especially with this new app, this new network, right? With no sort of like market awareness in this country, right? That was always an issue. So that's why he wanted the guarantees, I'm assuming, right? That's the benefit of it. Like, I'm going to get my 35 million. Doesn't matter what subscribers we get. I get my 35 plus million, right? With pay-per-view and opening it up back now to like regular TV to a degree, right? Like the incentive in theory would be the pay-per-view intake, the pay-per-view profit, not necessarily your guarantee, because you're now worried about pay-per-view buys. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Like, he basically did like what stockbrokers did once they get older, right? Like, all right, I'm going to take a job at a fund or a job in the back office looking at charts all day because I don't want to sell stock for 15 hours a day anymore, right? So the upside over here is higher, but I'll take the guaranteed money over here. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically what Canelo did. Now, honestly, and I said the same thing about Pat Mahomes and Mike Trout. He may have shortchanged himself. His power. Pat Mahomes, he got the $400 million contract. He absolutely shortchanged himself. And we could have a whole discussion on that. Because every other premier quarterback, their contract, the salary cap goes up every year, and they get a percentage of the salary cap. Mahomes didn't do that. So his contract is just flat. It doesn't go up. Mm-hmm. So 10 years, which is good for the Chiefs, right? Because they're going to have more cap space 10 years from now because Mahomes' contract is the same. Mahomes is arguably 3 years into his career, the greatest quarterback ever. 3 years into his career.
I'll be right back. I need to get some water, okay?
Okay.
Apologize. You ran away.
Everyone is talking about how Mahomes is it's $450 million, $500 million contract is outrageous. Push come to shove, you really want to examine it, Pat Mahomes is underpaid, right? There's never been a quarterback this young, this good, ever. Not Brady, not Marino, not Favre. No one 3 years into their career has been this good, right? He didn't play his first year, and the next 2 years, he's been on a record-setting pace. So Mahomes is underpaid. But he got that money guaranteed. Now, you get football, injury, they can void your contract. I get it. So only 100 and something million of that was actually guaranteed. The rest of it assumes he plays out his contract. But Canelo took the 35 million per fight guaranteed instead of say 5 million guaranteed and then a share of the pay-per-view. The way he sells, Canelo's drawing power, he may have made more money had he stayed on the pay-per-view model. A la Floyd Mayweather. Oscar De La Hoya made $50-something million on the Pacquiao fight when, I don't remember what the guarantee was, right? But there's so much back-end money. But now Canelo is in a position with his own. I don't have to promote the fights. Like, I don't know what he's contractually obligated to, but I can just go fight. Like, I don't have to worry about selling this thing, which there's a benefit to that. I'm just going to focus on boxing. I don't have to market this. I don't have to sell any pay-per-views. I'm just going to fight, and everything else is up to DAZN. Whatever DAZN does is what they do. And, well, they haven't sold too many monthly subscriptions, so they're having a little difficulty making payroll, it seems.
And we still have seen a sort of, not hesitance, but a slowing of sort of the fight news for DAZN, right? Like we were hearing about Daniel Jacobs and Andrade announcements like 2 weeks ago. So I haven't heard anything about him. What else? I think haven't heard anything about Linares and Fortuna and them being rescheduled. Is Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell, is that officially scheduled? Does that have a date?
It did, and no. Like if you go to ESPN, like when they have a schedule of fights or a box rock, it's not on it. So,
yeah, I mean, like,
although the Ugas fight wasn't on up until like 4 days before the fight happened. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. That's true. That's a good
Maybe
point.
they just didn't care. I don't know.
Yeah, but if fights are official and have a date, they're on the schedule, right? Like Loma and Lopez have a date, they're on the schedule, right? Even like Joyce Dubois is on the schedule, right? Like everything's on the schedule except for that event and a lot of the DAZN events. Like right now, I think the only DAZN events we have is the Ritson versus Miguel Vasquez one. We have what else? We have the Buatsi versus Khaled card. Whoa. God, that is trash. And the Dorticos Bridas World Boxing Super Series.
Great fight. Really, really, really good fight. I mean, it's not going to...
But let's also add, it's not Golden Boy. It's also not Matchroom.
Right. It's a good fight that's on the zone.
And Matchroom US, I should say. I know the UK cards are going on, but not Matchroom US. We haven't got any Matchroom US events. I think that's very odd.
Not yet. There's rumors there was of the three of the Jacobs fight, the Haney fight, and then the Superfly card. They're not official yet. They're all but official. There's dates on all of them. I put them in
the triple header in Mexico. That has a date though, right? Does it have a date?
It had a tentative date. I don't think any of it was official. I put it all in the chat. I didn't know we were doing this.
Haney has a tentative date of November 7th.
All three, and Jacobs does too. Yeah.
Jacobs says as well. When's Jacobs' date?
It was also in November, I think. They were all two of them were. They were all within a couple of weeks of each other.
Look, if they can get those off, good for them. Because I think obviously Matchroom and DAZN have a far better relationship, so that wouldn't be too much of a shock. But it does seem like for some reason there's been a little bit of a slowing of the progress for these fights to get made. I don't know why. And obviously, DAZN and Golden Boy seem to just be imploding their relationship. That's a nuclear bomb, right?
I went to Boxers and Brawlers gym in San Antonio, which is owned by Cameron Davies, the guy that does Cruising Kitchens, all the food trucks. He designs all the food trucks. He owns a gym in San Antonio where they all of the Robert Garcia guys train there before they go to California. Bam and Josh were there. I went and looked at their page, and Hector was there. I could have talked to Hector and found out what was going on with the Golden Boy thing, because he was supposed to be fighting, and then he asked for a couple more weeks. I missed him, but
damn it.
Yeah, Josh is fighting again in November against Maloney, Josh Franco, and then Bam is fighting on Halloween.
That's an ESPN card, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Another ESPN card. I don't know what's going on. Like, Franco he's got.
Can you imagine if we don't get? Here's the trick. I think we will get Ryan Garcia, Luke Campbell, because there'll be a Matchroom event. I think Matchroom will be the main promoters of that event, not Golden Boy, which would be interesting because obviously Ryan Garcia is the bigger star.
That's what I'm saying. Well, would the posters all say Campbell versus Garcia instead of Garcia versus Campbell?
If it's Matchroom promoting it would, right? It definitely would.
But wouldn't they still want to put Garcia first because he's the one selling the fight? Let's be real. I know he's not your guy, but he's the one selling the fight. Just let's put him first.
Dude,
anyway.
If Matchroom promotes it, Garcia first, that'd be hilarious. Oh my god, I would love that. Let's talk about the Haney Gamboa fight though, because I feel like from my memory, it's late now, so I apologize. And I know it's late for you too. You've been like semi like an apologist to this matchup, haven't you?
I kind of, and I don't want to be an apologist because I look. We know how it ends. Haney wins by knockout because Gamboa is 39 with a blown out ACL, right?
No, Achilles.
Okay.
Worse.
I mean, I like Gamboa. I'm glad to see him get the payday he deserves because when Gamboa was really in his peak back like 2008, and the purses weren't what you think they are. They're not even close to what they are now, especially the featherweight division. So he's going to get the payday like I felt he deserved back then. And I don't know how competitive he's going to be 39 with an Achilles injury, with a blown out Achilles. I don't know how competitive he's going to be. But like even in the Tank fight, he wasn't winning, but he was competitive. He landed some good shots. Like he's a guy that makes fun fights. I've always liked Gamboa, and like now he's going to get paid what he should have gotten paid back in the day. But we know how the fight ends. I get it. Haney knocks him out.
I'll put this. I think Haney wins, of course, but I do think this fight's going to be far more competitive than we will like. Even with the intangibles and X factors of Gamboa's age and Achilles injury, right?
That's a serious injury.
Because Gamboa is still like talented. He's still tough to a degree. Like even though like Crawford finished him, like Gamboa is still a tough guy. Like he's not a guy that is chinny, in my opinion, per se. And I could see like just Haney like not being able to be as efficient as maybe some people like to think he is. I don't think Haney is the most efficient fighter at times. So I'm just curious to see how this goes. Like we've seen Haney struggle with like Alejandro Santiago in his last fight or whenever that was. So I don't know. It's one of those weird fights where Haney is on a huge layoff, Gamboa is on a layoff and a loss and an Achilles tear. Haney hasn't been like wowing me lately. Gamboa's a wily veteran, so maybe he can like just play spoiler in the sense that he makes the fight far more competitive than what people want it to be. This is one of those risky fights because like if Haney goes out there and blows out Gamboa, he can say I blew out Gamboa when he took Tank Davis to task, right? Like that's the talking point that would come out of it. But let's say he doesn't. Let's say he struggles as much. It goes to decision. What does that look like? That doesn't look like Haney's ready to go face Lomachenko, like he's been talking about.
I think his upside is tremendous. Like Haney's upside is through the roof. At this point. He's not ready for Loma.
I think he should have skipped a Gamboa. That would be probably my point. That like if you were going to go for that high risk sort of fight and high reward fight, go for a truly high risk, high reward fight. And Gamboa really isn't that, in my opinion.
No, but it's a name. And what's the knock on Haney? You can't name one guy on his resume, right? Well, Gamboa you can name. You know, that's what it is. You know, Crawford hurt him. Gamboa hurt Crawford. Gamboa hurt Tank. If Devin Haney destroys him, knocks him out in 5-6 rounds, in one-sided beatdown, and he's going to sell. It's like look what Gamboa did to Terrence Crawford 12 years ago, whatever that was, right? Look what he did to Tank Davis with the blown out Achilles, right? And Haney just did this to him. So I get what they're trying to do, but I'm just happy for you. I would love to see Gamboa win, but obviously that's not going to happen.
Can you imagine?
Who trains Haney? Still his dad, right? His dad is still his head trainer?
I think it's still his dad, yeah.
I mean, obviously his dad's done a great job this far, but at this level, I mean, don't you think it's important to get like the best trainer you can get? I mean, obviously his dad knows what he's doing. His dad's got him this far. Same thing with Danny Garcia. It's like, I get it. You did a good job to this point, but like maybe another pair of eyes on him. That's,
you know me. I'm always in favor of like fighters looking for like new perspectives in their training. I've never have been of the mindset like you have to be with the same trainer your entire life. From the age of 14, 13 years old, whenever you put up and lace up gloves, to the time you die, you have to be with one trainer. I've never thought that.
And J-Rock and Breadman.
I thought talk about
that. It's like Jacobs and Rozier. It's like those guys just belong together.
I'll put it this way.
It hurts my heart.
I hope it's a little bit more amicable than what it kind of sounded like from Breadman. Because like it, not that he came out and said like, oh, like we had issues and like, you know, we're just like we fought and therefore like we're not training and we're not in a sort of business relationship anymore. Like I hope that it's just like, hey, like, you know, Julian Williams wants to just fight these level guys right now, or he wants to be with this coach right now, and I didn't want to oppose that. I hope it's that. It didn't sound like that for Breadman. It definitely sounded like the former instead of the latter. It sounded like he was upset with J-Rock and he wanted out, which is odd. It's sad. Like it really is. Like we've seen that a lot lately with trainers. But again, if it leads to good things, if it leads to J-Rock getting, you know, new eyes on him that improves his game, then good for him.
I think I have the utmost respect for Breadman. Like I really do. And J-Rock seemed like a really smart guy. Like I heard him speak before. He seems really sharp. Like he knows what he's doing. Like this was not an irrational, emotion-based. We got into a fight. I'm splitting. I'm sure it was. I don't know. It was amicable. I'm sure it was thought out. Right. I'm sure this wasn't a spur of the moment. They got into a heated exchange and broke up. I mean, they both seem more grown up than that. They both seem. I think Breadman is one of the most underrated trainers in the sport. Like I think like people who need a fix traditionally have gone to Robert Garcia, Teddy Atlas, Wildcard, Freddie Roach. Like maybe look at Breadman. You know, Breadman might be able to fix. Emmanuel Stewart was the all-time hired gun, right? Like you need to rejuvenate your career. Go see Emmanuel Stewart. Like I kind of think people should go see Breadman. Like he might be able to fix you.
I'd be curious. I'm curious to see what he does like now.
Jarrett Hurd should go see Breadman.
Who else does he train?
Steve. My brain doesn't work today. Cool boy. Stephen Fulton.
Ooh. Did they ever reschedule the Angelo Leo and Stephen Fulton fight?
They haven't scheduled it yet, but he is because that was when the mighty midget
Tremaine Williams.
Williams.
That's a good fight.
So he's mandated, right? Like Leo's fight has to be Fulton next, but there's no official date on that yet. They said originally November, but I don't know at this point. There's nothing official except that he has to fight Fulton next.
Oh, I can't wait for that fight because I can't wait for Leo to win and for me to be right and you to be wrong, of course.
No, I said after that Leo fight, I'm kind of leaning because I was leaning towards Fulton. I wasn't sold on Fulton beating Leo because I like Leo. Mm-hmm. After what Leo did to Williams, I'm kind of leaning the other way now. I'm kind of like, if you said I have to put money on, I want to pick Fulton because I want to root for Fulton, and I think he has a shot.
Of course.
But like, if I had to put my own money on it right now today, I'd have to put money on Leo. He looked really good in that Tremaine Williams fight.
He did. Jay in the chat is saying that he picked Haney by UD. He has no power though. Tony,
I don't know that that's true. Like, I'm not. He doesn't have the power like Tio does, right? But like, he's got some knockouts. Like, it's just a matter of learning how to sit down on your punches and maximize that power, right? Like, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe he needs.
He had that one knockout that got a bunch of play because it was like his DAZN debut, against like Antonio Moran or whatever his name was.
Does he have more power than Luke Campbell?
Ooh, I like that.
Yes, come on. Like, he's not feather-fisted.
Look, I think that's a comparable, like, sort of comparison there. Like, it just is. Like, it makes sense. Like, I think both guys are kind of like stand-up, very traditional boxers in a lot of ways. Their technique and their sort of finesse, or I should say their cleanness when it comes to their technique, is their best quality. It's not their power. They're good athletes. They're not extremely great athletes. But they're fluid, technical, sound boxers. Like, that's kind of how I view them. I don't view Haney as like a guy that is a finesse fighter, that he's unorthodox. I don't view him as a guy with a lot of power. I view him as a pretty traditional fighter, to be honest. Like, I'll be on. This might be a bad comparison. I see largely no differences between like him and people like Mikey Garcia.
Mikey Garcia was a puncher, though. I mean, he's not a mess, but he was a good puncher in small weight classes.
In terms of power, obviously, you're right. But in terms of like technique, in terms of like how their game is, like they're just traditional boxers. They're very stand-up guys with, work off the jabs, good, right straights, good right hooks, have a decent uppercut. They work the body enough, but not a lot. They have decent volume, but they're not volume fighters. They have good cardio, but they're not like insane cardio machines. And nowadays with Mikey at 147, I would say both guys aren't really the most like heaviest hitters where they're at. I would say that's a decent comparison.
It's good.
Maybe they're at different points in their career, obviously, but
yeah. I would say Devin has more natural gifts than Mikey does. He's got quicker reflexes. He's got quicker hands. You don't think so?
All
right.
I kind of see like Haney as like a poor man's. That might be too harsh. Just a little bit lesser than like a Daniel Jacobs in terms of like overall package.
I'm gonna make a weird comparison. Like,
I know Haney is like everyone thinks like he's like the next Mayweather to a degree, or not everyone, but a lot of people do. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, I think he's good.
Yeah.
I think he still has a lot of fine tuning to do.
He'll collect a belt at one point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mikey Garcia is and this is going to be a weird comparison, is the Karis LeVert of boxing. Like, fundamentally, he's good. Like, he's got the good size and reach and stuff, but it's like there's no great athleticism. So you can get him to a certain level. You can get Karis to average 20 points a game. You're never going to get him to average 30. You're never going to have him be James Harden. You're never going to have him be, Jimmy Butler. He's just not that good, right? But what he does, he's kind of mastered. But that's as good as he gets.
You said with Mikey or with Haney? Sorry.
With Mikey. No, I think Haney's got a higher upside. I think Haney's reflexes and speed give him a higher upside. But Mikey, I think like what he is, he's mastered, but there's nowhere else to go, right? Like Mike, he's got to go down in weight. But like, look, Mikey's quick enough. He's strong enough. He hits harder enough, right? Like he does everything good. Like he's physically strong. He's got good reach. He's got a good cardio, but there's nothing wow about him, right? Like there's nothing naturally awesome about Mikey Garcia. So where he is now is as high as he goes. Like that's it. Like
no, I definitely agree with that. Absolutely. Hold on. Jay is asking me. He's still young. Compare him to a 22-year-old Floyd. Well, let's compare him to 20.
You want to compare? Floyd had Manfredi, Gennaro Hernandez. It was destroying these guys.
Hold on. But he had that by 22, right?
Yeah.
Floyd
was maybe top 3 pound for pound in the world at 22 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So he was 19 when he had his pro debut. Okay.
That was in 96, 97.
96, right?
So by 99, look at the wins he had.
By 99. Okay. Carlos Gennaro, Angel Manfredi, Gennaro Hernandez. Yeah. I mean,
he was blowing these guys out.
Gennaro Hernandez is he a Hall of Famer?
No, he's not. That's the one guy. Like he's like the
He's been on ballots though, has he?
I don't know why he hasn't gotten it. Some of the guys they let in. It's like Gennaro Hernandez should be in.
That's right. And like obviously, like in the next year or so, he beat like Emmanuel Augustus and Diego Corrales. So like at 23, he was already like a long reigning champion.
By 23, he was number 2 pound for pound fighter in the world behind Roy Jones Jr. Like, think about that. At 23. Like I like Haney. Let's stop that comparison.
I don't think any of us said that he was top 3 pound for pound at 22. Did we say that?
Floyd?
I don't think any of us said that.
At 23.
At 23, he was
23. He beat Corrales.
He wasn't top 3 pound for pound right then, I would say.
I mean,
he was in the pound for pound. Yes,
he was high in the pound for pound. Okay, 5. He wasn't lower than 5.
No, he was high. He was high. He definitely was.
At 23, I got to go back and look at that because after that Krause fight, I'm like, this guy might be the best guy in the sport.
But Jay, okay, Haney's 22 right now, right? So let's say a year from now, can he beat enough guys?
Look at the names you just ran off of Floyd Mayweather. Look at those names. No, like Haney would have to be.
Yo, Gamboa is not like a Diego Corrales. What? I'm sorry.
So he'd have to go up a weight class. He'd have to blow out Taylor or Ramirez. Like, blow him out. Just, you know what I mean? He'd have to go up a weight class. Knock it. What if Floyd knock him down like 6 times in that fight? Like, guys. I'm not even a Floyd fan, right? But like, come on, guys.
What would be an easy way to look up pound for pound lists in like 1999? Like Ring Magazine?
I guess Ring Magazine pound for pound 1999.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna Google this. I'm curious where he was because
Floyd was, but look at the names he had beaten. Like they weren't Hopkins, I guess, at that point, 99. But Hopkins by 99 hadn't beaten De La Hoya or Trinidad yet, so I don't think that he would have been above Mayweather at that point. Well, maybe the Ring had him there because it was a Golden Boy guy. But there wasn't too many guys higher pound for pound 1999 than Floyd Mayweather.
I love when we're right, and Jay, especially Jay in the chat, because Jay, I love you in the chat. I hope you know that. I brotherly love, brother, always. Floyd Mayweather, number 2 pound for pound in 1999. Yes, yes. Fuck off, Jay. Oh my God. Yes, it is some fucking gunshots. I'm going to read the pound for pound list because this is like a history. This is like a moment in history for us.
21 years. This list is old enough to drink. Think about that. Think about that. The list is 21 years old.
It's funny. I'll go at number 10 first, okay? And then work my way down. Number 10, Stevie Johnston.
Good fighter. Good fighter.
I'll be honest.
Little Stevie Johnston.
I don't know who that is.
You were 4 years old at this list.
I was 4. So
Yeah.
What I remember in 1999 was like, Star Wars came out that year. I remember seeing Phantom Menace in movie theaters, and that was like a wow moment. That's about it. That's my only memory from 1999. Number 9, Bernard Hopkins.
See, I said he hadn't beaten De La Hoya and he hadn't beaten Trinidad yet. I thought he'd be higher than that, but not much higher.
Yeah, this is crazy. Number 8, Eric Morales. Number 7, Ricardo Lopez. Number 6, Mark Johnson.
Mark Too Sharp Johnson.
Number 5, Shane Mosley. Number 4, Oscar De La Hoya. And number 3, Felix Trinidad. Obviously. Number 2, Floyd Mayweather. And number 1, who do you think it is, Gary?
It's Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah, it's Roy Jones. Yeah, it's Roy Jones.
The GOAT. If you made a list of all-time pound-for-pound fighters, Roy Jones Jr. is number 1.
What's box?
You can't change my mind. I don't know. He's got so many losses because he fought till he was 50. Like, they probably have him.
They probably have him low, right? They must do.
They have Mayweather 1 and Pacquiao 2, I think. And then Sugar Ray Robinson 3rd.
Dude, BoxRec make me log in all the time. I
hate it. Like, are there that many people trying to hack people's BoxRec account? I mean, there's nothing you can do from a BoxRec account, right? Like, I don't know why they do this.
Okay.
I don't know why you have to log in at all.
I mean, read the top 10 guys in BoxRec, okay? I'll go at number 10 first. Wow, you're going to be so happy. I think you're a big fan of this guy. Number 10, all-time on BoxRec, guys. It is Andre Ward.
Ooh.
Wow, right?
Yeah, I like Ward. I like that.
Wow. Oh, my God. That's hilarious. There's a lot of people that must be upset about that. A lot of Kovalev fans are just fiercely upset in the chat right now. All 5 of you. Number 9, Harry Greb. Old school. Okay. Number 8, Joe Louis. Number 7, Joe Calzaghe.
Stop it. Stop it. That's a joke, right?
I'm not joking.
He beat Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr.
The best part is number 6, Bernard Hopkins.
Hopkins beat Roy Jones Jr. too when Roy Jones is 40-something years old.
Number 5, Manny fucking Pacquiao. Number 4, Sugar Ray Robinson. Number 3, Archie Moore. Number 2, Floyd Mayweather. Number 1, the best fighter of all time.
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound. Ezra Charles.
Jeff Horn. Oh, Ezra Charles. Okay. I mean, that's weird.
Weird. So fucking weird. That's like the Jeff Horn effect because he fought everyone.
Yeah.
He has losses to everyone.
It's hard. And then Michael Spinks isn't on that list. It's
criminal.
If you don't have like Michael Spinks on your list of top 10, I'm fine with that. But you can't have Ezra Charles 1 and Spinks not on the list.
This is disgusting. Gennady Golovkin is above Chavez Sr., Marvin Hagler, Willie Pep, Charles Monzon, Lennox Lewis. Oh my God. And Michael Spinks. Criminal. Michael Spinks is at 45, by the way, all time.
That's wasted. Michael Spinks was great. Yeah, I'm looking at Ezra Charles right now. He did have 95 wins, 52 knockouts. I mean, it's a lot of wins. It's 25 losses, though.
Foogatti in the chat. What up, Foogatti? Saying, wait. Was fucking Roy Jones Jr. in there? Where is he? I don't. He's number 16.
So ridiculous.
He is behind people like Marquez, Billy Khan, Muhammad Ali, Oscar De La Hoya. He's ahead of people like Klitschko, Canelo, Barney Ross, Felix Trinidad, Rocky Marciano, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Gennady Golovkin.
Roy didn't have the best career of anyone on that list, for sure, right?
He's the best fighter of them all.
He's the best. It's like when you say, who's the best baseball player ever? That's easy. It's Ken Griffey Jr. But you get, okay, A-Rod has more home runs. This guy has more RBIs. Okay, I understand. Griffey's prime was with the Mariners, right? So we're talking about 1990 to 1999. There was nobody better than Ken Griffey Jr. If you just took, you tried to make the perfect baseball plays. This guy's speed, this guy's arm, this guy's glove, this guy's swing, this guy's power. You wouldn't have to do all that, right? You would just have Ken Griffey Jr. That's kind of like what Roy Jones Jr. was. He was just the perfect fighter. You couldn't make him any better. Like if you were building a guy on Fight Night, you couldn't make him better than Roy Jones Jr. So like in baseball, if you wanted to make your own guy on what's the Showdown? What's it called? That made the baseball video game?
MLB The Showdown?
The show. right?
Oh,
It's called,
the show, yeah. Yes.
You can't make a player better than Ken Griffey Jr. You can only hope to make Ken Griffey Jr. And that's the way Roy Jones was. And they were both so cool at that time. That was my era, right? That 94 to early 2000s. That was my sporting. And at that time, you had the greatest fighter and baseball player of all time.
For all and just tuning in, I feel like Tony A just jump in, like Foogatti just jump in. I will say this. Me and Gary had a very interesting, lively discussion / debate in the first hour of the show over politics and economics. Foogatti, if you didn't listen to it, you would love it. Just want to point that out.
Matt hit me with a bait and switch. He said we are going to talk boxing, and then we got sidetracked.
Yes, I did that. I did that. Fuck, I'm trying to pull this up, but oh well, it's freezing up the stream. So I'm gonna stop doing that. I was gonna try to pull up the boxing rec on the actual computer I'm streaming off of, but I won't do that.
Did you see the Anthony Yard fight? Just off topic. Did you? I did not watch it on Daily Motion. I did not watch it the next morning in Russian or something. I don't even know what language it was. It sounded some kind of Eastern European language. I did not watch it on Daily Motion the next morning. I did not do that. But I thought he looked good. Like, I thought he looked sharp. I thought he looked he fought a guy who was just kind of tough and just kind of durable. Deck Spellman?
I have no idea who he fought.
But I mean,
I'll put it this way. Anthony Yard, though, is good. Like, even in the Kovalev loss, it was clear that Anthony Yard is talented.
Good.
He was not managed right in terms of, like, matchmaking. Clearly.
Yeah. He's already 29. Like, it's time to go. It's time to go with him.
It's time to fight, like, the top 10.
I said Jesse Hart. Have him fight Jesse Hart next.
Oh, my God. He would brutalize Jesse Hart.
But that's a good, I mean.
No, that's a good fight. No,
yeah.
I like, but, like, that was a good fight. Like, that's a good matchup, I should say. Like, it makes sense. Common opponent with a lot of other names. Right step up in terms of just ranking. It makes tons of sense. Hopefully he does, like, the Lubin route where, like, you are largely untested at all as a prospect and jump in there with a legit talented world level fighter and get your shit beat in. But in Yard's case, he was actually like really competitive.
He almost stopped Kovalev in the 8th round. Yeah.
A little bit different, right? In that sense. So we saw with we saw with Lubin, when he came off the loss, he fought tons of top 15, top 20 level guys that he should be fighting. And that made tons of sense. And he rebounded correctly. Hopefully Yard does the same thing. Like fights that I know is probably hard to make due to promotional issues, but like Callum Johnson would be a great UK fight to make.
That would be a good fight. Yeah.
I don't know why they haven't made Buatsi versus Callum Johnson yet. Like I just don't get why they're like in terms of matchman's perspective, so slow with Buatsi. Like they need to push the fast.
Do they not think Buatsi's good?
I don't know. I just think that matchmaking sucks in boxing. Like I don't know what the primary or the sort of overall issues are or the underlying reasons for why that is per se, but clearly matchmaking just sucks in boxing. There's either great fights or just like bad fights. And there's no in between. Because the in between fights, like just the good fights, are usually really fucking awesome. Like, for example, we had the Joe Smith Eddie Alvarez fight the other day, right? Or the other week. That's just a good fight. Right? That's a fight between two top 10 guys. It has some title relevance to it, but not really. So that made tons of sense. It was a good fight. It was awesome. We need to see that.
Anthony Yard is fighting. Is it Lyndon Arthur or Arthur Lyndon? Lyndon Arthur.
Lyndon Arthur, yeah.
All right. I don't like. I mean, I know the name. I don't know that I've seen him fight before. What card would I have seen him? I know the name. I can't even think of what. It
would be Frank Warren cards, obviously.
Yeah. But why him instead of Buatsi? Like I don't know. Like I mean, is Lyndon Arthur that good? Is there anyone in the UK? Like, is this?
I would say he's a domestic level guy. Like he's for you to understand, like he's a Jason Velez.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a top 50-ish guy.
I guess if you win that, then you go to the European level, the winner, and then the loser stays at the domestic level.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Foogatti. Jesse Hart is a bum. Oh my god.
He's not a bum. Like
he just is. He doesn't know how to actually like use his strong suits at all. Like for a guy that has natural height and like length and speed like him. He just is. He's a really poor man's like Tommy Hearns. And I use poor man's in like an extreme sense, probably.
Me and Rob are gonna push Frank Warren to make the Anthony Yard versus Davide Faraci fight, to renew our UK versus Italy rivalry, which was made famous by Eggington and Fida Giglio.
Yes, the famous
1-0.
The famous England versus Italy show.
It's the new Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Don't you know?
That is so fucking good. Fuck, Gary. I mean, we've been on for a while. You want to talk about anything else, or you want to wrap it up? What do you want to do? Anyone in the chat have any other questions or topics you guys want to address? Anything else we should address? Should we talk about the? We should talk about this before we run off. The Matchroom card in Mexico, because that is actually a really good card. The Estrada Cuadras rematch, Roman Gonzalez versus Israel Gonzalez, the Battle of the Gonzalezes, and Julio Cesar Martinez versus Maximo Flores. That's a good triple header. Like I am in love with that.
There's no Josh Franco on that card, though.
I know. But Josh Franco's going to fight Maloney in a rematch on ESPN on the main event. So I'm like, he's still going to get paid. He's still going to get like his time in the sun. So like, I'm not too concerned about that.
They need to. If Chocolatito wins this fight, which I think he will, Josh Franco's got to get that. It's makeable as long as the zone, Matchroom, and Golden Boy are still working together. Like, make that fight, and then Josh Franco can dethrone Chocolatito Gonzalez.
Josh Franco is one of those guys. Like I've said, I'll talk about that, Liam. Thank you. I remember you saying that earlier. Josh Franco is one of those guys where he's going to be ultra competitive with all the names we talk about at 115. Does he beat them? I don't know. I think he probably beats some of them on some nights, but I would still pick the top 7 or so against Josh Franco right now.
That's okay. He's only 23, right? He's got time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine.
Just don't start so slow. You got to start out of the gate. You can't give away 2 or 3 rounds, which he does in every fight.
And that's just fight maturity. That just comes with time.
Especially with Chocolatito, because if you give away 2 or 3 rounds, you might not get any more than that. Don't do that. Start sooner.
He's already in his rhythm. He's throwing 100 punches around. Like, what are you gonna fucking do?
Josh Franco versus Rungvisai. Let's make that fight.
Ooh.
Rungvisai looked a little bit on the decline in his last fight.
Yeah, but wasn't the fight also like 120 pounds?
I stayed up and watched it. It was in Thailand. I think I got about 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning to watch it. You watched it live too, didn't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't
He did not look good. But again, like Chocolatito Gonzalez didn't look good in his team fight either. And then he looked
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Khalid Yaffe. Like, oh my God. That was vintage Chocolatito right there. Also in the chat, Liam Ross was asking about Tim Tszyu versus Dennis Hogan. It's pretty close to being made. I hate that fight.
I guess you got to keep it in Australia.
I just don't get it. Like he beat Jeff Horn. Like he doesn't need to fight these guys anymore. Like,
no, I feel like that's a step backward. Hogan beat Munguia.
But he didn't, though. That's the issue. If he actually had beat Munguia, then maybe this is
be a world champion.
Like maybe it's a different like conversation here, but he didn't. And then he got just lit up against Jamal Charlo.
Which was out of his weight class and out of his league, right? Which
I get why the fight's gonna get made from like a domestic perspective, like a regional perspective, but in terms of like a ranking and like progression standpoint for Tim Tszyu's career, I hate that fight. It makes no sense. There are names that we mentioned. I forget, like when we talked about this when
Adames is the fight I wanted.
Yeah,
right? If he can outbox Adames and stay away from Adames' heavy artillery, that's good. And let's move him. Let's get him to Shera after that, and then Castano I guess Castano would be the next fight because Castano versus
who's do you know who Tszyu signed with? Like, is he signed with Top Rank or is he just featured on ESPN?
I'm pretty sure his dad was. I don't know.
Okay.
I was assuming he was because he's got his,
Okay. If he is, then make the Adames fight. Like it shouldn't be an issue. The only reason why you would do Zoo versus Hogan's because it's a domestic fight. You would sell tickets in theory. Like, it would be sort of maybe a fight you can make more money off of. But like that gets back to like matchmaking sucks because of that type of shit. The best fights aren't being made due to promoters wanting probably to just keep as much money as possible. Networks want to keep as much money as possible and collect as much profit as possible. And also, clearly, promoters are lazy when it comes to trying to promote difficult fights. Like Indominus versus Zoo is a harder fight to make or to promote just because of fighters are separated geographically, culturally, and therefore you have to get over those hurdles to promote it. But I always view that as a very negative, like glass half empty perspective because you can just grab from more people now. Like, why just make an in-house Australian fight or like, Commonwealth fight, so to speak, when you can draw on more people, different sections of society with like an Indominus fight? Like it just doesn't make sense to me why there's always that hesitation, so to speak, or that laziness, so to speak, with these promoters. But anyways, Foogatti is saying Munguia is trash. Yep, agreed on all parts. Anyways, Gary, is that going to be it for today?
Munguia is going to have no problem getting fights. Everyone wants to fight Munguia because he comes with a name, right? Like there's name value at Munguia. He's got a fan base, so it means money, and he's so beatable. Like people want to fight Munguia. He's never going to have a problem getting a fight.
That's true. That's very true. Only that he might not want to take those fights.
Yeah.
Munguia just ducking 160 till you retire.
Like he could have walked into 160 and fought Andre. You didn't see Golden Boy trying to make that fight, did you?
Liam Roscoe in the chat is saying that no overseas promoter has signed Tim yet. Oh, fuck, man. If you have all the options on the table,
yeah.
Why the hell are you fighting Hulk Hogan in Australia? No, fuck. Go fight some top 15 guys, please. Like, make your fight worth my time.
Yeah, he said his name is Tim Zoo. It's not Junior. Well, then go fight somebody good then, right? Like, if you're your own man, if you're your own fighter, and you can compete at the world-class level and not just make money off your dad's name, go fight somebody good then. Go fight Charles Conwell. Get knocked out.
Liam Russell, any overseas opponent would be hard to get in Australia as they would have to quarantine for 2 weeks. I mean, the Maloney brothers did it in reverse. Like, if they can do it, we can ask other fighters to come here. And also, I would assume that the Zoo, for the right fight, can go to the U.S. or go to the U.K. or whatever it would be. Like, again, like, the issues of the pandemic have clearly been shown by these promotions and promoters and networks that they can sort of hurdle these issues, right? Like they can get over these issues. Like it's not a problem. With the right amount of money for the right fight, it's just fundamentally not a problem. They brought, in terms of Top Rank, they brought 2 different fighters across the Pacific Ocean during a pandemic for like flyweight fights. Like, come on, man. Like this isn't an issue. Like, if promoters want to say it's an issue, it's a cop-out. That's my take.
I mean, it's an easy cop-out, right? I mean, because the average person isn't going to argue with you, but you're smarter than the average bear mat. You know better.
Guys, stop it. Anyways, yes, if you just tuned in, we're about to wrap up the show, but tune in to the first show I did with Cole James Cash, breaking down the UFC event coming up and just breaking down some of the sort of cultural issues within the MMA community. Also, obviously, me and Gary have been on for about 2 hours now, so we talked about a lot. First half of the show was very different than boxing combat sports. I definitely implore everyone to go check that out. Even if you're not like a politics or philosophy person, I thought that was a really fun thing to do. Like, I'll be honest, Gary, that was probably the most fun we've had, or I've had, I should say, on a show in some time. Because that was just a free form of discussion between 2 individuals, right, Gary?
Absolutely.
It's an amazing thing. Democracy in action. If you guys hit the like button, share the show, all that fun shit. Hopefully Foogatti, since he's here, he can listen to me when I say, Foogatti, please text me when you want to do a General Strike podcast. You've been ducking me all week. And what else? We will be back on for MCR probably soon. I want to do more shows again. Obviously, construction's about to wind down here back at the house. So hopefully we get back onto normal schedule next week with Rob at our 2 p.m. show. Because I miss Rob.
And
Curmudgeon.
What fights do we have this weekend?
We have. I talked about that earlier as well, but I'll talk about it again because it's not great. We have the Pedraza Javier Molina card on ESPN Plus with F.A. Jagba making his top-ranked debut, and Robbie Ramirez on the card.
Oh yeah.
Wow. And we have the Erickson Lubin event with Terrell.
Okay, that's a good fight. I mean, it's not.
It's all right. I'm talking about it's a good fight. It's not great. It's not bad. It's a good fight. It's what it is. King Tug versus Eduardo Ramirez or Eddie Ramirez, and Jaron Enos versus Juan Carlos Abreu on Showtime. Also, I think this is a midweek card. Next week, there's a Fox Sports 1 card between Nestor Bravo.
Of Puerto Rico. He's a good fighter.
Oh, he is? Okay. I don't know.
I think he's a lightweight or a 130-pounder. He's good.
It seems like just a solo event on FS1, guys. So just check out for that in case we don't do a show before then. But we should. That's September 23rd. That's before all the fights next weekend that are really fucking good. Next weekend, we have the Josh Taylor event against Apinon Kongsong and Charlie Edwards making his top-ranked debut. We also have, obviously, the Charlo doubleheader pay-per-view.
And of all the days
and also Dorticos Burritos is on that day as well.
That's during the day, right? That'll be early.
Yes, that'll be an afternoon card. Obviously.
Of all the days that my daughter can have, my daughter just started cheerleading. She's 6. It's the first year of cheerleading. She has her game that she cheers for at Cowboy Stadium, 7:00 at Saturday, September 26th, right during the Charlo fight.
Gotta find a way to buy it on your phone.
I mean, I'm gonna buy it and then go back and watch it. But at that point, should I even bother buying it? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I mean, it's
up to you.
An hour and a half. I'll be back by 9, so I'll be back for.
Up to you, Gary.
It's $75 for this, and I don't.
Hey! This is like one of the best pay-per-views we've had in some time.
It is, and I can't even watch the whole thing.
You
know what I'm saying? I can,
just not live.
But then I might as well not watch it on Daily Motion the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Don't do that.
Piracy on this channel ever at all. Yes, we do.
Didn't you get in trouble with Facebook for that?
I don't have a Facebook account anymore. Shout out to the UFC and Facebook being a fucking hellscape, man. But anyways, guys, have a great night. Follow me, Matt Hunter, MCR, all social media platforms. Gary.
Find me all from social media, 3D Boxing blog from Texas to the world. Thank you, and God bless.
Peace.